Yeah, the gift of meditation is that we drop out of our minds and into that expanded state of awake awareness. And the way of doing that is such a powerful opportunity that we have, and all of us in this room on this call are meditators. We've found the benefit of meditation. We have discovered the benefit of being in that spaciousness without thinking. I always like to say that anytime you're not caught in thought, you're in the field of meditation, right? You're in that field of awake awareness out of which everything arises. When we're caught in our mind, we are not in that expansive experience of our true nature. What goes on in the mind tends to impact energetically. Well, it impacts everything actually, and it can be a hint or a key to our inner state of what we are energetically emitting. In other words, what frequency we're emitting. If we're caught up in thoughts that are agitated, and thoughts that are resistant to an apparent other or a circumstance or a situation, then we can be sure that that thought is underpinned by a wound. And so that thought could be used as a trigger to do the 6 steps, to do the work, to see what's actually going on. Because the way your world shows up depends on the frequency that you're emitting. And the frequency that you're emitting, the litmus test for that is to notice what your thinking mind is doing, or what sometimes we may notice more directly what is the tension or the tension in the body. So the body takes the hit of the thinking mind, caught especially when it's caught in resistance or in opposition or any form of judgment, because that is an indicator to us. So if we can start to receive the gift of the experience of noticing if there's tension in the body, we might want to go to our mind. We might be more aware of what the thinking is that's causing that, and so we can check on our thoughts. But it's an opening into true nature, so that you start to experience ordinary life with a calm and peaceful mind, a sea of glass, which is our true nature. That's consciousness, right? That is the awake awareness. And out of that emerges everything. And so we have the privilege of exploring the way in which we create experience, the way in which we create our reality, has fundamentally to do with the frequency of our thinking. The thinking is going to be the indicator. So when you find yourself caught up in thinking, especially if it's judgmental, you can know for sure that you're caught in a wound. And so this is the intersection and the work that we do here, where you move towards doing the 6 steps of when you're caught in what would be called a trigger, right? I'm thinking that they don't love me anymore, or that there's nobody here for me. And I notice that thought because now I'm using my thinking mechanism to be really clear about my frequency. Mm-hmm. So when we are alert to a thought, a thinking issue that can be classified as a trigger, and all of them can, unless they're clear and free of judgment, then we go to the 6 steps to freedom to do the process there. The light of awareness shining on anything is catalytic. The light of awareness shining on a thought, but coming into the awareness that that thought is negative or that thought is judgmental, that is a litmus test that can bring us into shining awareness on that thought and using that awareness as the light that shines on it and is catalytic in its shifting. Yeah, the 6 steps will always work. What I found with many people, especially here in the Sangha and on YouTube, on Zoom, is that most everybody at this point, in having been engaged in this awakening direction for a while now, most everybody is very aware of the early wounding conclusions and the triggers that evoke them, but we must never, ever assume anything. If you get triggered, go there, go through the 6 steps again. I'm always available in these, in our Wednesday afternoon sessions to do that work with anybody here in the room or on the Zoom call. The idea that your reality, that your experience is based on the external reality is an illusion that keeps us locked into experiencing what we don't want. That makes sense to everybody? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you're believing that the way he or she or it is influencing you and limiting you, then you need to really recognize that as a trigger, because it's never true. What you're experiencing is who you're being to yourself, and who you're being to yourself may be reactive to what something out there is being perceived. They didn't call me back, that I didn't get a return text, whatever it is, but it's who you're being to yourself regarding that causes the upset. There's nothing wrong with being triggered. It's really important not to put sugar over shit. It's really important not to let these things slide by. We're not interested in getting by with anything. We're interested in going into the light of true nature as the awareness, so that we start to, in our own reality and in the collective reality, create a new heaven and a new earth. The heaven is our internal state of mind and heart, and the earth is the external showing up of material reality, looking like conditions. The minute that you are caught, pulled into the external and feeling like that's the cause of your experience, for sure use that as a trigger. It's really, really important. The way of meditation probably was lost at what we energetically are historically called the fall, when we fell out of our hearts and into our minds, because our natural state is our heart connection as awake awareness to ourselves, and in the expression of that, a reality that matches that high frequency of self-regard, of true nature, of true identity as the one I am. When we fell into our mind, and then we're caught in cause and effect, we're caught in polarity, and in that entire range of experience is underpinned by the frequency of fear. And so what the fall pointed to, and what we all live out of ongoingly until we have released all attachment to our idea of ourselves, right? All attachment to the idea that I'm not good enough or I don't matter, right? And just this presence, awareness prevails. Until we get there, we're going to be caught in polarity, one end of the stick or the other, and the experience of, if not fear, for many of us, it may just be anxiety, just a sense of something could go awry, just a concern of our externals. So today we will do the 6 steps with anybody here or on the call, on the Zoom call, who wants to, or whatever topics you might like to have the group and me consider. That's what the floor is open.
Thank you, Polly. But what you're saying is, I have a question about that. So you say when we are observing the mind, we shine the awareness on the mind, and that's when we can perceive the frequency of our thoughts that will show the frequency of our life. Because the field is just responding to that frequency that I'm going through my mind and my heart. So when you say that, it means that I should be concerned about the negative thoughts and of course know what the energy that they're bringing, or any kind of thoughts, since the mind is a 3D tool to operate here, just try to disidentify with the mind and go to a place maybe a little beyond the mind. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, the mind caught in judgment of any kind, you can, I think of it as trying the spirit, taking a look at it. We're very accustomed to using the mind to try to get a sense of what we should do or what our opinion is. But the mind is a great, like I said, it's a litmus test for who we're being, right? Thinking as a function is its proper use of the mind.
When it's needed.
Yeah, when it's needed, when you're doing the accounts for the month, unless you're arguing with your spouse about those, when you're, or when you're, it's like functionally the rational analytic ability is very, very helpful. But we don't have any business living there.
Yeah.
It doesn't apply to our own self judgment, which is usually where we get caught. That's where, once the self-judgment is in place, then we're seeing through a distortion field that has us judging others and events and external circumstances. Being present is a feeling of what I call true north. It's like an alignment. It's like just this peace and presence, and without the mind being caught up with issues that are not the purview of the mind.
Yeah.
Again, it's a rational analytic. There are many, many things that the mind is very good for. The thing that it's not good for is judgment about oneself, which then gets projected onto others. Yeah. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, I feel like if we could call our particles of attention, what you've been talking in the past, call our particles of attention back to our heart. Doesn't matter any kind of thoughts that are going there. And one thing that I learned, I think with you, and you just start that when you notice a thought come, one thing that comes to my mind is say, that's not it. Because it's just one thinking process that I'm creating. That's not the reality. It's just my interpretation. So as soon for me, I detach it to that idea. I don't allow the emotions to connect and the energy to become dense and dense. And it's kind of a lightness way to live life. So I perceive myself, go judge myself. It's happened today many times because I'm packing to leave. And I perceive my mind say, oh, you are maybe late. That's very common, and I get very anxious and stressed. And I just say to my mind, I don't think that's that. Thank you. And then do what's in front of me to do, so I cannot build up anxiety.
Right.
It's like, oh, I think that's that. Thank you. Move on. And don't get attached and trying to control, do something different, get something, avoid something. No, thank you.
The ability to do that, I mean, you've done so much work, Linda, but the ability to do that is to see that you have that option. Because for a major part of our lives, most all of us have felt that that option wouldn't have been made available.
Yes.
Right? You're just held and caught by the self-judgment. So it's a beautiful thing when you start to say thanks, but no thanks.
Exactly. It's freedom. It's like, oh, it's so good. Oh, I see your point of view. It's just one point of view like any other one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Move on. No, don't hook any emotions on that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the probably one of the major steps towards the awakening is that understanding that I don't have to believe what I think. Right? That thinking is a function and that it serves sometimes, but it's been running the show. And the reason it can run the show is because it will generate and bring into our consideration something that's fear-based, and that will get your attention.
Yeah. And Robert said that in a brilliant way another day when we were talking. He said like this, seems that because we are afraid of our parents or they make us feel like we're doing something wrong, that now we are attention, do everything right because we can be cut and you be punished. So we project everything out and you become an alert, and now our mind just go and go and go and never stop because we try all the time to analyze, is that good, bad, right, wrong? And when you let go of that, you notice that you don't need the mind all the time.
Right. Yeah, that points to that the opening out of that mind's insistence is what we call the field of allowing. And this whole experience of our true nature as that field, the awake awareness could be it could be a way of talking about awake awareness is the field of allowing, this allowing things to be. It doesn't mean that you are attacked by, it's not about that. It's about allowing everything to just show up and be what it is without the need to control or the need to limit, right?
Or resist or
Exactly.
avoid or prevent, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that field of allowing is our natural state coming from our heart, coming from the awake awareness, which could be equivalent to the field of allowing. I'm just using that because the teaching there is the beginning of a kind of detachment, a little bit of detachment, which doesn't mean that you're not engaged and you're not available. It's not about relatedness. It's about presence. It's about a perspective so that you actually have access to the field of allowing, right? Everything comes to pass unless we resist it or attach to it. And so we act as if things show up and then we're stuck with them. But that's because we're caught in reaction to them. The way that we get mostly caught in reaction to anything is believing that it shouldn't be that way. And then we're caught with it. And it's a dynamic of a polarized experience.
So Polly, I
Yes.
want to give you a great example of that. It's a more,
Thank you.
I was, yesterday, I decided to check my bank balance, see what was in there. And, I was $1,100 overdrawn. And I was, how did this happen? That was my first thought. And the second thought was, it's just what's happening. That's your coaching to me. It's just what's happening.
Mhm.
There's gotta be a reason for it. I didn't think I should be overdrawn, but I was calm about it. I didn't go into a panic around it. And I allowed it to be the way it was. It was a great example for me. And I'm still dealing with it. It was a PayPal thing that didn't go through, but I'm still overdrawn, but it doesn't matter
Right.
as much as my peace of mind.
Right.
So thank you for that. And thank you for this wonderful saga for getting me to this place.
Yeah, and staying in that, in the midst of that, this is just what's happening, then it doesn't carry the energy of catastrophe or the energy of it shouldn't be this way, which is going to be like resistance, which then sticks things. You know, one of the things in the sense of the nature of reality as entanglement theory, which I sort of pull together in my own kindergarten style mind with the field of allowing, is that things are always working, they're unfolding, they're coming together in ways that we're not privy to, nor do we need to be. There's a larger picture here. And it's all working, and without resistance to it, or without our idea that it should be different than it is, there are things working out, and there's never any conclusion anyway. Yeah, like we made up that there's a point at which there's a conclusion. Everything's in progress and cycles and arising, And showing up reality is delicious that way. This 3D reality, what we want to do is, because out of fear, we need control, then we try to control things, and we never have the fun and the experience of the always already arising and overflowing nature of reality that doesn't carry polarity. It just doesn't. There's not a good end of the stick and a bad end of the stick. That's a great example, Amora. Yeah. Being at peace with whatever is. Then you're playing the part energetically and allowing it to come to fruition and in a way that never will be necessarily apparent to us. Things are going on and moving out into the field of reality at a way in which we can't control, and that is for human beings caught in fear. The need for control is very, very strong. The reality is that if we did control it, it would be more seriously screwed up than it already is. Not a good idea, right? Because our limited perspective is so limited.
That is so hard to truly believe.
Well, there's so many ways in which, I always say, believe it, hell, I can prove it, right? It's like the field of allowing has emerged as this Sangha and as these wonderful people on the Zoom. Life is arising and showing up as incoherence, in connection, and the fun of it all. The relief of the mind that gives up the idea that it has to know and that it has to control is so delicious. It's like offering yourself, giving yourself the experience of heaven, the experience of peace, the experience of everything that we say that we want. We are already that, but we have occluded it, we've obscured it with our need for control that comes from fear. So if control worked, we would be doing a different Sangha now.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say about my financial fear, I've had financial fear all my life. So if ever there was to be a trigger, it would have been yesterday.
Mhm.
So it was really good that it was around money, so I could really test myself.
Right, exactly. It's very important to be alert to those ways that are different now.
Yeah,
So good.
really good.
Anyone on Zoom or in the room that either has a topic you'd like colleagues to touch on or a trigger you'd like to work? Yeah, Lara.
Okay, so I'm still really stuck on something you just said that was quite enlightening for me, which was the whole thing about there are no conclusions to be made, that everything's in process and unfolding. And I know for me that I'm always in process and unfolding, but sometimes it seems like other people in my life have it all figured out, right? And they just like know exactly what it is, but really I realize they don't. But so I just wonder if there's a way, instead of having to deal with each individual trigger as it comes up, which I know I can work with and do, but is there a way just to clear them all? Like right now? I want the shortcut.
That's right, that's right. Yeah, the shortcut is in the moment when it does seem like you're up against something, you're triggered, is simply, I say the shortcut is the acknowledgement. I know what this is, it's a trigger, right? And I know who I am, which is the resolution. So there's that shortcut, but typically the gold mine is in the seeing where that trigger takes you, because it might be, and it's according to how much work you've done or how much has been dispelled of the early limiting self-judgment. But often we can find things there that are not obvious, and it might be a very small trigger, but it may lead to something that is that's at play and so pervasive. Like I talk about the distortion field, it's like it's the lens through which you see reality, and so a trigger can sometimes take you there. So I mean, you can trust yourself about when it's like, I know what that is. That's a trigger. I know what I concluded. That was the self-judgment, and I know who I am. So that kind of can collapse it, but it never hurts to go there, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura.
One thing that helped for me, if I can share probably about how to, what's the word? Take the energy of almost all the triggers. I would say almost, but it's like bring the light of awareness. When I know something going on, I know who I am. I am the awake awareness, where the reality unfolds in front of me. And I just see that reality unfold. That doesn't mean anything because I'm the awake, the awareness. I'm not attached to this identity anymore and to my belief systems. So what in the past, for example, certain things, it was very important for me need to be my way, quote unquote. Have a right and a wrong way to see or to do things. And now when I see this happening and things are not going my way, I'm like, oh, there's no me here. The awake awareness, and this person is having this experience, and that will pass. As the Buddha said, that all will pass. The whole thing has no power anymore.
That's right.
It's like dissolve itself.
Right.
No.
Yeah, typically we're going to be mostly engaged with things that we're resistant to, whether it's a self-judgment or the judgment of circumstances and other people. And so when the light comes on, that's meta to that, then it starts to dissolve it or to shift it in the ways that you're pointing to, which is kind of what Laura was pointing to too. And that light can shine on that, and then it dispels the distortion.
It's not a me here that need to get something or avoid
That's right.
something or need to be my way. It's just as Amora says, just life happening.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything about me. Not me here.
Yeah, so we can see, and that's really perfectly expressed, but we can see that the purpose, that the actual function or the mechanism of waking up is for the me to dissolve. And because the me was created out of the idea of like the early childhood wound, or maybe a past life wound, where there is a me here who's got to get something or avoid something to be okay. And that it starts to create more and more, I would say, more and more infrastructure to the me, more and more infrastructure to the ego, right? And so the ego mind identity, body identified and mind identified, that's where suffering exists. So exactly like you say, if we can see that there's no me here, that is the dispelling of that woundedness. It's and that is a shortcut. No me, no problem.
I have that written on an index card on my refrigerator.
Yeah,
No me, no problem.
right.
Hey, Emily has her hand up,
Great.
so let's bring you in, Emily.
Hi, Polly.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, thank you, everyone. So proud of my mom, Amora, for not being triggered about that $1,100 because I was worried she was triggered about it because she sent me a message the other day and I'm like, oh my gosh, my mom's panicking. No, so I'm glad to hear you're not.
Yeah.
I have a question about when you were talking about the conclusion and talking about and this is who I am, like at the end, and this is who I am. So I'm always trying to differentiate, because there's so many teachers out there that talk about, you know, you know, like affirmations. I am confident. I am strong. I am, all those things, right? I am brave. I am courageous. But that's all still part of the same ego spectrum, right? And
Yep.
even though it feels better, is there a reason we should also stay away from that? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we have to stay away from that as well. We shouldn't try to think positive about ourselves either, because that's also not real,
Yeah, exactly, Emily, that's a really good perception, a good insight, because what we're doing is that we are creating a kind of structure, or a kind of, we're involved in creating an ego persona. And that's why I always think of affirmations like that, or it's like holding up your arm, at some point it's going to come down. So you can say in front of the mirror every morning, I am beautiful, I am good, I am wealthy, I am, and then you go about your day with that sense of self, right? But at some point, it's efforting to believe that. But what happened, what the work that we're doing here, the awakening work, has to do with a matter of clearing out everything that's not true. I don't need to be strong and beautiful and courageous. I know who I am. As the awake awareness, I am all of that, right? Without there being an attachment to a person. And that's the experience of true nature is so full and so I don't know exactly the word to use, but it has a profundity to it. It has a sense of depth and a sense of presence, and it's not personal. And so we're freed of the idea of efforting to be good, or to look good, or to be bright, or to be whatever, expressive, whatever, right? Because we're coming home to our true nature. And that's and that spaciousness, everything is available, right? The
And
ease,
what about,
peace, everything that we're wanting. Yeah.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. And what about like your like your personality, right? Let's say somebody's, got a certain, so do you feel like when you get awakened or enlightened, do you lose your personality, or do you still hold on to that personality? Do you know what I mean? So if
Yeah.
somebody's funnier.
I'll have to ask my grandchildren. I don't, they would remember. No, the way in which the body mind unit, and we talk about astrology or human design, and the way in which we made choices about the vehicle through which we express, right? And it has characteristics to it. It has the gifts and talents that it has, and it has the limitations at the level of but true nature, using this vehicle, it's like I say, it's a Southwest Airline commercial. You're now free to move about the country, right? You're now in full expression. It's like, but you will be expressing through what you chose for the incarnating vehicle.
Hmm,
Sense?
yeah, yeah, it's so good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. Dora.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So you have to forgive me. I'm on a 3-day fast and I'm 2 days into it. And what's
Grumpy,
happened? Yeah. And instead of thinking about food, what I got faced with was myself.
huh?
And like so big. It's been just like, and I'm hearing all my thoughts because I've been in a, kind of internal state process, going, I'm not like out in the world doing this cleanse. And so it's been, I feel like what you're talking about today is so perfect. I came like face to face with my making somebody else or other situations my problem, and had almost laughed at myself because I realized, oh my God, I've been putting my happiness out on the way someone else is behaving, and they shouldn't be behaving that way. And my cat's here. But I guess I'm stuck I'm trying to hear everything. And I'm stuck in what, like, I can let that go now, and I can be awake awareness. That's what I think this fast has created for me, is a space to become awake awareness, because there's no distractions of, you take food out and it's like, boom, there you are. So I'm excited about that, but I still feel that there's booby traps everywhere to these triggers that you're saying. And I used to think that I knew what my earlier similar was, but somehow it feels like these feelings that I'm feeling now don't connect with that. And anyway, it's just interesting. It's like, it's almost like I've been searching for my freedom. And because I'm married, I'm a wife, so I'm responsible to him. I'm a mother, so my child needs me, and I get distracted over there. And then I have my animals and their needs and all of their energy, and then my business and all my clients. And I don't know where I am in all that. I lose myself in that. And that this fast has really brought me back to myself. Anyway, that's what I'm teasing out right now. And I'm just kind of not sure where the link between that awakened awareness and the freedom is.
Yeah, well, the awake awareness is always already what's true for each of us, right? That's the sea we swim in. That's what is, it vibrates with potentiality and possibility, and we then in our attachment to being a person, which is what we relate to the garden story of the fall, but the whole idea of being a me gets freed up into true nature in this sense, is that when you're no longer living from a role, or living from the idea of a limitation, or the idea of what somebody else might think about you, or that even you might be self-judging about, then you're just present in the moment. Now, the field of allowing that I've been pointing to, it's been a part of the teaching for a few weeks now. It's like, that is the detachment from which you are like, it has, for me, it has a kind of physical sense of it, like present, true north, and available, right? It's like the generous queen of the persona of being present, like totally conscious right here, right now, with what is it that I want to express? What is it that is my response? If there's something coming toward me from the outside, what is my authentic response to that? So we start to get in touch with what it means to live from our true nature, rather than from the distortion field of our wounded identity. The wound puts up a distortion field, so that what we then perceive is limited to our idea about ourselves, right? I'm not good enough, or I didn't do that right, or I should be here for my husband, my children, my pets, kind of thing, right? Coming home to yourself from this true north place, you are 100% available for appropriate interaction with the external, looking like husband, children, pets, or whatever, right? But you are centered in yourself, and that's the place that it feels anchored. That's the place that feels true north, right? You can't make it up through roles in the external. But you can be assured that if you are awake on your own behalf, in other words, you've cleared the triggers of your early limited childhood wounded perception, if that's clear, when that's clear, you're 100% available for your reality. And you're also experiencing that sense of presence, of knowing the one I am. And that the fullness of that, you see, we try to create everything that we already are, right? It's kind of a redundancy, right? Like, we are already alive, alert, awake, aware. but we believe that we are not good enough. And so we have to reach out. We tilt out energetically toward an external reality to get affirmations that we are good enough. Like I am a good wife, or I am a good mother. I am, yeah. And so when it's like, I probably said this today already, but it's like recollecting your attention particles from out there. And right now with your fasting going on, it's to bring your attention back to yourself. And be present on your own behalf, making these choices that you're making about this cleanse. But the most important thing is to not get pulled off by your mind that has been shaped and limited by the collective conditioning about roles and about familial conditioning. And maybe in your family, the mother had certain obligations and expectations and roles, but all of those fall away. And then we find ourselves in the moment, truly alive and engaged. You say, if we're in our mind about anything, we're not experiencing aliveness. We're experiencing our thinking about it. And that'll never suffice. We'll never be happy coming from that place. So just being present and seeing what's in front of you to do. And this is a great opportunity with this cleanse that you're going through, Adora. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it feels so right on. And I have had peak experiences the last couple of days of being in my true presence. And it's been like exciting. And I feel different, like a veil has been lifted off of me, like almost like we can't see it. We're so in it. And
That's
so,
right.
yeah.
Exactly.
And so when we take a break, which is such a gift, then it becomes clear again. And then, then I want to hold on to it, attached to it. But it's fine. I know it's a process, and it's just a path. But, I keep thinking like, I want freedom. And it's really freedom from the attachment
Right.
of the story that I made up myself, about my roles and everything. So anyway, I declare myself free.
Exactly.
Yay.
Exactly. Beautiful. Beautiful. It reminds me of that cartoon from back, I think in the 70s. The little guy is hanging onto the bars of the prison, and then the next slide it shows that there's no building behind him. He's just hanging on to the bars, looking out like, yeah. And so we simply turn and see that it's all open, it's all spaciousness. And
Thank you
yeah.
so much. Thank
Good
you.
work, Adora. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adora. So we have about 8 minutes left. If anybody is,
Yeah, question.
yeah,
Can you hear me? Okay?
Greg, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wondered, is there a line that would be drawn as far as being triggered between childhood trauma and just bad human behavior? That, I mean, if somebody walks up to me and slaps me in the face and I get triggered, I don't think it's going to, let's just assume it's not going to be from childhood trauma. It's just, who wouldn't be triggered if they were treated rudely or, gotten some physical. So, because I'm thinking that there's got to be some reactions that don't have anything to do with childhood trauma. That's just basic human nature. So is there a line that is drawn between that, as far as, if you actually feel you have a right to be upset because of the way you've been treated, that may have nothing to do what happened to you in your childhood?
Yeah, I think that I understand the distinction, Greg, but the most important thing is, even if it's an overt misbehavior of an apparent other person, to use that to see how you're feeling about yourself or what the childhood wound does. The idea that our interactions are gonna be smoothed out at the level of the problem is something that just hasn't worked out over decades for people like us who've been engaged in the human potential movement and in consciousness. We've worked at reframing, we've worked at nonviolent communication, we've worked at all kinds of things, but the shift within each one of us, you know, if that overt behavior is of such that you can still use the experience, the trigger, even as you say, I'm not interested in being around you anymore. If you're behaving or expressing that way, you can be on your own behalf for sure and say what's true for you. One of the things that is so subversive in regard to our identity is that we very early on left ourselves as children, as young, as infants even, because our well-being did depend on caretakers. It did depend on being fed sometimes. It did depend on externals. And so we come into this reality, incarnating into a body that can be harmed, that can be mistreated. And so there is that cycle of being at the behest of, at the mercy of a parent or a caretaker or a sibling or whatever. But at the level of our true nature, we move beyond that to always be doing the work at the same time that we are what I call being on your own behalf, is to say clearly that doesn't work for me, and to be expressive of self-care, right? So if there is a line, that would be it. And it depends on both doing the work of, if I'm having something like that happen in my life, I want to look at all the different facets of how it got expressed in my reality, right? And another person's bad behavior can certainly be a part of that, but it still gives us access to that. If the trigger is, I got mistreated by somebody, right? What's my earliest memory of that? Seeing what I concluded about myself, because it's in that field of self-definition, in that field of self-identity, that we start to come home to ourselves. Because fundamentally, what we've all been experiencing is the way we treat ourselves, right? And so if whatever happens, if we use that to clear that up, at the same time, we're clear about this far and no further in terms of the apparent other's behavior. But it can get to be a little bit convoluted at that intersection. Both what I say that's true for me, being on my own behalf, and at the same time use that unkindness, that unfairness in the treatment to look at what I may have concluded about myself early on.
So if that was the case, and you had a friend that, you know, his behavior was just unacceptable to you, how could you go about setting a boundary without being judgmental? I mean, you can use an iMessage. You would just tell them, hey, look, this doesn't work for me. You know, if you want to get together again, I'm going to set a boundary here. And, you know, if the line is crossed, I'm going to check out.
Right. Yeah, and to express from yourself, this is what I want between you and me. This is what the experience I want of our friendship. And I feel like it's being limited by how you're treating me or whatever the issue is. Yeah. Yeah, and to ask for what you want. One of the things that happens with the early wounding for all of us is that we simply have no ability to express, because we're at the mercy of whatever crazy parenting we may have incarnated into, right? But as you come home to yourself, as you say what's true for yourself, you see, early on, authenticity goes out the window, I would say, because we don't have the wherewithal to deal with an abusive parent or siblings, right? When we're the younger one or whatever. And so coming home to ourselves, but when our attention particles go out, they go out because there's something out there that feels scary to me, or that feels like it's going to hurt, or that I'm not going to get what I need. So our attention particles are out. And what we want to do is to bring them back. And when we bring our attention back to true north on our own behalf, we can simply say what's authentic for us. And
Okay.
that was not available early on. So we've spent whole lifetimes of dealing with the inability to express authentically because it was too scary when we lost our authenticity, when we started either being a people pleaser or an avoider or a bully or whatever we took on, right? So but it's in this moment saying what's true for me, and each of us representing ourselves that way can start to clear the frequency of a reality that is based in polarity and based in fear. So we understand why this stuff's happening, and how we are with it on our own side is the most important thing.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Okay, we are shifting gears now. I'm going to turn off the recording. And we will, for those of you who want to leave, this is a good time. We are going to